Do you think Democratic politicians have changed their views, or do you think they're just afraid of their party's activists the way that a lot of Republicans are afraid of their party's activists, the MAGA folks?
B. They're afraid, yes.
They're just afraid.
Bill Maher is wrong again. What else is new for a guy who hasn't had a new thought since 2003? America's #1 self-hating liberal is speaking one-on-one with Jake Tapper because, well, both are on channels owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, and instead of investing in new talent under the age of, say, 50, CNN is just airing Maher's show Overtime on Friday nights. Isn't media conglomeration fun? So there he is claiming that Democrats are just as afraid of their activists in their base as Republicans are afraid of theirs. Now let's give the unfunny elitists partial credit for recognizing that yes, in fact, Republicans are very much afraid of their own base, mostly because many of them are domestic terrorists. The GOP has been cowed by a minority in their own party, as Kevin McCarthy well knows, and a minority of the most extremist Americans. But have Democrats? What about our crazy activist base that wants things like universal health care and to not die in a watery grave of melted glacier? When's the last time you heard Joe Biden utter the words Medicare for all or the Green New Deal? Trick question, he hasn't said those things. And let's remember the Black Lives Matter movement, which was a mass movement supported by 63% of Americans, according to an ABC News Washington Post poll. In 2020, that energy helped Joe Biden surge into the White House. But what's happened on police reform since? Nothing. The Bidens have disciplined their dogs harder than they've disciplined the police. Maybe that's because one of the dogs bit a Secret Service agent before barking a cab. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But when the call from activists in the streets was in part defund the police and fund real safety, what did the president they helped elect say instead?
We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police, it's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them.
Right. What about centrist Democrats? Are they cowed by the minority of progressives in Congress, a la Marjorie to Kevin? No, not in the slightest. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, effectively labeled Representative Omar an anti-Semite, and the current Speaker of the House, Hakeem Jeffries, has called AOC an internet celebrity and not a politician. There's only a bit of daylight between those comments and a Tucker Carlson segment. And don't get me started on how the media treats the OG activist Bernie Sanders. So no, Bill, Democrats are not moved by their activist base. But he had more to say on how much he misses the way we were.
4 tribes, I think, in this country. I think there's old school liberals and old school conservatives, Republicans and Democrats, the kind of people who used to, I think that's the majority of the country.
Like Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush or something.
Yeah, the kind of people who never agreed on a hell of a lot, but they found ways to work together. They didn't hate each other. It wasn't all about making liberal tears and cry and all this stuff and, you know, owning and destroying people. It was just, yeah, I don't agree with Bob Dole, but, you know, we can work together. We can get a grand bargain, that kind of stuff. And so I think that's the majority, but then you have Trumpers, and then you have Wokesters. And, you know, those fringes are not doing this country any great favors.
Okay, let's break this BS down in parts. First, when anyone says both sides, you know that's a red flag.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
But second of all, Bill Maher is pining away for the days when Democrats and Republicans could work together. But work together on what? On screwing over the poor? That's what neoliberal economics under Clinton did. Things like free trade agreements that helped ship jobs overseas. Things like welfare reform, which doomed families to poverty. Crime bills that criminalized those very same poor communities. He was fine with all that because at least they were working together. Now, when Republicans have gone full fash and progressives want real action, the left is being uncivil. One side broke into the Capitol to overturn an election, and the other side is marching for abortion rights. Tomato, tomato, let's call the whole thing fringe. So-called Trumpsters and Wokesters, in Maher's mind, are the same thing. Because if you haven't watched Real Time lately, which I don't blame you if you don't, Maher's been on a tear against radicals like trans kids who just want to live their lives. In fact, he's joined the right in piling on trans kids. In Maher's boomer-ass brain, the people who storm the Capitol are the same as the people who don't want you dead-naming Elliot Page. And last point, back when Democrats and Republicans didn't hate each other, the right was working behind the scenes means to undo any and all civil rights in this country, from voting protections to abortion, by using the courts. And my, now, how they are succeeding. So excuse us if we're not nostalgic for a time when the Christian nationalist fascists simply smiled more. Either way, from his cushy job as an unfunny, out-of-touch host of what otherwise could be a dope show, Bill Maher won't be feeling any of the effects that happens to our democracy, even though he swears he's actually the victim of rising fascism.
I was afraid for my own well-being. I thought I could wind up in Guantanamo Bay. I think I still could.
No, the people who went to Guantanamo were brown and Muslim, a religion that you have openly stated that you believe is backwards and barbaric. Funny, the same kind of thinking that put some innocent people into Guantanamo to begin with. But I get it. Comics are the real victims. Sadly, despite his terrible political takes and being painfully unfunny, Bill Maher is still on the air. You'd think he'd want to be canceled by now, just so he can tour off of being a martyr against the Wokesters. Wokesters? What era are you from, dude?